Alright, guys, welcome back to the podcast. So, those of you who might be liking this kind of topic of movie reviews, I don't think this is going to be a multi-part series because I don't think I have a lot to say about this specific movie, but I just want to give a disclaimer that two disclaimers. First of all, it's definitely a spoiler alert. So if you don't want the movie The Devil's Playground from 1976 or something around there, it's a movie about this like Catholic school. If you don't want that movie to be spoiled, then you might not want to keep listening, and you can go watch it. And I'll try and find the link where I rewatched it for free the other day. The next disclaimer is going to be that it does have some form of sexual content in it. I'm a pretty sex positive person, but I think it's a tricky thing. So, and I just want to go to say that I'm not Catholic. I'm not from... I don't know anything specifically about anyone. I don't think I have any knowledge, first or second hand, of anyone who's been abused, like, in any kind of way by the Catholic Church. I know that there are rumors and allegations, and it's definitely something that people speak about, but it's not something I have any knowledge about, and I'm not the type of person who blames the victims, and I'm also not the kind of person, or at least I try not to be the kind of person who blames the victims, and I try not to be the kind of person who, tries to be like, oh, like if someone was in some traumatic situation like this, it's nothing. I try not to take those two types of approaches. Like, I do think that people who are abusive towards others are in the wrong. I do think that people who are doing weird, creepy stuff with kids or anybody, against their consent, it's weird. I already have quite a few problems with organized religion, as we very well know. And so I do kind of have my biases in some ways, and, questions in other ways, and I get intrigued in other ways, and then some things I'm like, nah, like, places of worship need to kind of be doing better. But again, I'm not here to say like, oh, the Catholic Church this or that, or or oh, it's nothing, it doesn't really happen. I think it does really happen. To what percentage, I honestly don't know. It sounds like it's a higher percentage than I even would have thought. It does sound like it's a pretty high percentage, in my opinion, just to be hearing about it so much. Like, I'm pretty sure that, different types of abuses and things happen in a lot of different organizations, church, religions, and whatever kind of thing where there's some kind of leader in charge. If you got like crazy leaders or crazy people in power who are doing crazy stuff, you're gonna have problems. And so, they're gonna promote problems or hide problems or create problems, and other people suffer. And so I do know that happens just as the nature of having these kind of power dynamics and things. It shouldn't happen. I don't agree that it should happen. I don't find it as entertaining in a way that I'm like, ooh, like I really want to know. I get grossed out by it, honestly, but I do think that it's something that if people want to hear about it or talk about it, I do think it's important to discuss. I would say that when I went to a religious school as a kid in 3rd grade through 10th grade, there were at least 2 occasions where adults were interacting with people who were minors. Now, I'm not trying to make excuses because it was wrong. I know it was wrong. I didn't do it, but I'm just saying, like, I knew about it, but, you know, we were never really taught, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you kind of do get taught, but it's like, we get, like, you know, health class, they kind of briefly teach you, like, okay, if someone's touching you like this, or if somebody's this age range, I don't know if we ever learned about, like, you know, like, you shouldn't be dating anybody who's 18 or older, or, I mean, I wasn't at that school when I was 18, but I don't think we ever heard that message directly. It was more like, if someone touches you in an area where you have a bathing suit on, that's inappropriate, like in a bathing suit region. I mean, people weren't even talking about safe sex and things like that. Like, there wasn't really a safe sex thing. It was like you weren't supposed to have sex before you got married anyways, and so, in that religion, and so it's not that there weren't any conversations about it, like, but there was no, like, harm reduction approach, nothing like that. It was just kind of like, don't do it. We did learn about, like, sex generally, like, but we didn't really learn that much. You know, we didn't really learn, like, about relationships or appropriateness or inappropriateness, but I did know that one of the teachers that was one of my main teachers, it was a female teacher, and she was flirty and involved with one of the male students, and they both were involved with each other. I don't know his actual age. He might have been 18, because there was some whole backstory with him, and I know he was older than all of us, and I met him in, like, 5th grade, and I think he stayed until 9th grade, 10th grade, something like that, and he didn't age the whole time he was there. Like, all of us from between 5th grade and, like, 10th grade, we matured, you know, like, people were taller, people were, you know, they were hitting puberty and things. Like, he was already in puberty, past puberty, and I remember we would play sports with him, and he would kick the ball so hard, people would just part, like, nobody would even, like, I think he was possibly a grown man. He was possibly, well, a young man. He was possibly 18. It's possible he was 18. I don't really know. The story was that he was like 16 or something. So we already knew he was older than us, but I feel like he was even older because, you know, he was already mature. He already looked like a mature adult. Like, but also he still had a young look to him. But I don't know. I don't know if he could drive. I don't really remember his situation, but he did seem grown. I don't remember if he worked. Like, I feel like he worked. Like, I don't know. Like, I just kind of got this impression that he was, like, I never really got to know him, but I don't know. I don't want to, like, I don't know. He had some whole backstory. I don't know if I want to get into all the details. But he had a whole backstory. And there was a teacher that was involved with him at one point. And we all kind of knew it, but at the same time, like, she didn't really teach us that much. Like, I think she taught, like, one of the classes that a lot of us didn't like, or a class where it's like we weren't, like, complaining that she wasn't, like, teaching us. That she would just put on music and, like, have us doing arts and crafts or some kind of, like, busy work. But it wasn't never her teaching, but she wasn't teaching. Like, there was definitely a time where she was not teaching, like, on a pretty regular basis, at least a couple times a week. She just, like, during certain classes, just put on music, and, like, we didn't have assignments or anything, and she'd just be, like, flirting with this other guy. They'd be, like, giggling over by her desk and, like, talking and doing, I don't know. I didn't think much of it. I also wasn't paying that much attention, but I was like, wow, they're really friendly. And it wasn't always like that. Like, she was usually a teacher up until that point. And then, yeah, like, she had issues going on, but she was, like, in her early 30s, and this guy was, I don't know if he was 18, he might have been 16, either way, it was creepy and weird. And then one of my friends, they gaslighted one of my friends when the friend saw them, like, kissing on a trip. They made her feel really bad about it, that she said something, and she should have said something. She was in the right to say something. They should not have been doing that. And this teacher taught more than just my class. She taught like at least 2 grades, and a lot of students were witnessing her doing this. Like, she would do this enough that we all kind of knew that she was doing it, but like, I don't think there was anything, like, they weren't making out in class. They weren't like, from what I remember, they weren't like hugging, kissing, touching, sitting on each other's laps. It wasn't like that. It was just like talking a lot, to the point where they were over there at the desk looking at her paperwork, or like looking on her computer, or talking and just having casual conversations like you would like on a lunch break or something, it looked like, but friendly. But I don't know if she seemed to be treating him different than the other students. I really don't remember. Like, this is such a long time ago. I was in like junior high or something when this was going on, or early high school age, so I really don't remember too well. And then there was another student that was a male teacher. I don't know his age. He was dating a student who was definitely younger, because she was younger than me. She was maybe 2 grades younger than me. So I want to say, if I was at the oldest, about 16, she was 14 or so. Or maybe younger. Maybe. I don't really know her actual age. Maybe she was 15. Either way, she was under 18, because I was never 18 while at that school. And so she was under 18, and I don't know if he was over 18, but I'm going to assume he was 18 or over. I don't really know his age. Maybe he was in his 20s. I really don't know. But either way, the school knew about it. Everybody knew about both of these situations. The kids all knew. We all kind of knew. We all kind of joked a little bit about it. And then, but none of it, I don't think much of it happened on campus, like during class, when it would have been like suspicious. Like, I don't think they were, like, I think the girl and the guy, the girl that was way younger than me, I think there was rumors that they went out on dates or were meeting outside of the school, but I really don't know. Like, I didn't really know her that well. Her sister was in my class and was friends with another one of my friends, but I didn't really know them that well like that. I think I had them over to my place like once. But I was pretty friendly with everybody. Like, I knew her. Like, I didn't hate her or anything. Like, it was fine, but yeah, it was just weird. So yeah, I could say that, yeah, I definitely did go to a school where there was some kind of odd, like, weird stuff going on with some of the teachers, and the other teachers allowed it. Nobody fired anybody over it, to my awareness. Like, nothing like that happened. It was just happening out in the open, and everybody knew about it, and nobody really said, I don't know if they said anything or not, but they never did anything. So it was just not an okay situation, I guess. But I don't really know. I can't really, I mean, it's not, I don't know. You can't really compare, right? I can't really say like, oh, that's not as bad as like a priest touching somebody physically. Like, I don't really know. I don't really know what happened in these situations. I only know what I saw, and I know some of what my closer friends saw, but I don't really, it was wrong anyways. It was wrong for it to be happening, whether or not there was physical touching ever. But I don't know. It's just that power dynamic and that kind of thing is just wrong. So anyways, my stance on it is that it's wrong. But I would just say that's probably as far as my experience goes with like any form of religious type of involvement with that kind of stuff, with a form of like child abuse or misusing your power. I don't know what is actually considered. I mean it is a form of abuse, I would say. Even if they were well meaning, even if it wasn't sex, I don't really know if it wasn't either. Like, I have no idea, but I don't know. Those teachers should not have been with those students like that, in that way. They should have just treated them like every other student. They shouldn't have been singled out or seeing them anywhere outside of class and like sharing secrets and things about their lives. That's not appropriate. Even if the teachers were young, it still wasn't right. But I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I don't think that really compares, like, as in, it's not the same thing, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think it's the same situation to what I've heard about some of these things that happen in these other churches. Um, but I would just say that there are, I don't know how to say this without sounding like a jerk, but it's like, it sounds to me like the Catholic Church has a reputation for these male priests to be preying on younger children, on children. But I don't know if there's other religions or denominations where they have like a reputation. I do watch that podcast, Cults to Consciousness, and I do listen to a lot of what I think it's Eli Yoder. I haven't watched any of his content lately, but it sounds to me that there is a lot of sexual abuse in these other communities too. There's a lot of sexual abuse in the Amish, in some Amish communities. There's a lot in, because they've started like some kind of support program on that they talk about on YouTube, about if people are Amish or know someone who's Amish and needs help. And then they do talk about sexual abuse, and they've done multiple kinds of interviews with people who talked about being sexually abused. And then that show from Cults to Consciousness, they talk to people like they talk to people like in certain Mormon and other kinds of religions, some sex cults, some other types of cults where they had some kind of sex things going on too. So I know it's coming forward now. The Catholic Church is the only one that I know of that has like a reputation, but it doesn't sound like they're the only ones that do it. So I don't really want to single them out. And even the spaces I grew up in, there were some weird things that kind of went on. And I don't know to what extent, but I mean, it was not appropriate and it wasn't legal. And there were adults around that, either if they were completely blind, they might have been completely blind to it, but all the kids knew. But I don't think there's any way that we could have all known. Like, I think we probably even talked about it, like, around our parents, like, oh, so-and-so is always, like, flirting with the teacher or whatever. But I don't think, unless somebody's observing it in the class, they're probably just going to assume the teacher's doing their job and there's just a student with a crush who's just flirting, and they're not going to know the extent that, like, all the other students are, like, told to, like, sit on the floor and color these pictures while we listen to the radio or listen to like some album, like a full-on album in the middle of English class or whatever, and we just don't even do the class and do some arts and crafts or something while the teacher and the person are over there flirting. Like, that was the kind of thing. It wasn't even like, oh, this person's getting special attention. It's like, we're literally not having class because they're busy flirting with each other. Like, we weren't learning every day. Like it's okay to take breaks and have like those special occasions and stuff, but it's like, she wasn't always like that, and we knew that's not how school's supposed to go. But also, we're like teenagers, and nobody's gonna be like, oh, who's gonna tell the teacher they need to be like doing their job and stop flirting with the students? And also, I don't think at that time I knew that that was wrong. I just thought it was funny and strange, and like, I don't think we were ever taught that like that kind of thing was like wrong. Like, it was so nuanced that it wasn't like they were like making out in class or like touching each other. So I don't think it was like above, at least for me, it was above something that I would have known at that time is like not okay. Like, I knew it was weird. I knew it was like weird, but I didn't know that like it could have been illegal. I didn't really know that, but I knew it was weird. I was just like, this is strange. But yeah, like I wasn't, I don't know. That's just what I want to say. I don't want to single out the Catholic Church and make it sound like they're the only ones doing it. It's not okay that anyone's doing that, but there are others who are doing it too. It's not just the Catholic Church thing. There's some other underlying problem to it. It's not the Catholicism. Clearly, it's not the Catholicism. It's other stuff. And so I try to be careful with that kind of thing. I really, yes, I'm gonna literally take 20 minutes explaining that. I'm not trying to be like down with Catholicism. I don't know enough about Catholicism to say a thing about it. I just want to talk about this movie, and so let's get into it. Basically, so the Devil's Playground. This is not the Devil's Playground. That's the Amish documentary. There's an Amish documentary called The Devil's Playground. This movie, The Devil's Playground, is about so there's this school. It takes place in, I think, England. There's this school kind of in the countryside. Now, I do not know the names of these kinds of places. I don't know enough about Catholicism, I should study it more, but I don't know enough about that religion, that denomination, to actually speak in detail about who was who talking to who and what were their roles. I can just explain kind of from an outsider's perspective what I observed. And people who are Catholic, you will definitely probably be more than confused. And other people, sorry if I'm confusing things, but I'm not Catholic and I don't know a lot about Catholicism. So, I should, but it's kind of strange that I don't. That was kind of one of the religions that we were always kind of taught to stay away from. Like, I think people would have been more upset with me studying Catholicism than they would have been. Like, people knew that I read the Quran and studied Islam even when I was young, like in maybe early college and like late high school days. People knew that, and I think they would have had more problems if I would have started reading the Apocrypha then or something and like studying Catholicism. They would have probably been really upset with me about that. It was kind of a taboo. So that's part of the reason why I never learned much, is because it was kind of something I was kind of taught to stay away from. So it was one of the things that I did sort of stay away from because I didn't really understand it. Plus it seemed super complicated. And I was already doing other complicated things, so I just never took the energy or time or effort to like learn too much. But I do know a little, but I didn't learn enough. So anyways, this movie takes place at this type of boys' school. So to me, it sounds like the students apply to come to this school. It's an all-boys school. They're not allowed, like their families do come at certain times, I think. They're allowed to send letters back and forth. It's got a very Harry Potter-ish kind of theme to it. Like I'm not very familiar with boarding schools like in England, but I do believe from all the amounts of movies I've watched, it is kind of part of some culture, people do that. They go to boarding schools. Like I would say maybe more than in the US. It's more of like an England kind of thing. To my knowledge. Yeah, because you always you see stuff like Harry Potter and all these other kind of school movies where it's like there's always like an all-boys school or an all-girl school or like a mixed school where it's like the students live on campus. Maybe they'll go home on the weekends or something, or every so often, or for holidays or whatever it may be, but they don't live at home on a regular basis, and that seems pretty normal. It's not like a day school, it's a boarding academy, and we do have them here in the US. But basically at this boarding academy in England, there were these students that were, I believe they're high school age students. So they'd have their classes, and then, it was a religious school, but I think the male students in this school it was a male Catholic school, but they were kind of taught, I think their goal was to kind of like, I think they were trying to, I think they call it a vocation. Like the vocation was to be like in the church. Like the goal was to, like, I feel like this school was training these young boys and men to become priests and have leadership roles like in the church. Like I don't think it was like a typical Catholic school. I think it was a Catholic school where they were like supposed to take more effort, because the way they had them doing things, it seemed like ultra religious. And I've heard things about Catholic schools being strict, but I feel like I already grew up in a pretty strict religion, and most of the Catholic people I grew up around didn't seem like they grew up as strict. They, even the ones who did go to Catholic school, it sounded like the schools might have been strict, but it didn't sound like they were strict, like compared to what I had experienced with the religion, because it seemed like there was a difference between the religion and the school. It's just my explanation. There was like a difference between the religion and the school versus where I was coming from. The religion was a big part of it, and then it kind of infiltrated into the school as well. But I feel like in Catholicism, maybe the schools are really strict, but sometimes people go home and their households and their friend relationships maybe in the house aren't as strict. I don't really know though. I have met Catholic friends that like they would go to church or mass or whatever like all the time, like every weekend. So they were strict, but yeah, we were like pretty I don't know, we would be pretty I don't know, there's always a lot of overlap. There's always a lot of similarities. So basically in this movie, the main character, he's, you know, always got kind of like a smile on his face, and he seems like really humble, really like following his passion to be like connected to God and in this religion and in this school program. And he basically befriends a boy who seems to be about his same age, and then like another guy who seems to be like older than him. And you know, there's a couple of they call them brothers, like the older, like I guess technically whoever would be like a teacher. And then there was Father, I don't remember his name, but he was weird. If you don't watch any part of this movie at all, except for this one part, there's a part where the father, the main priest or whatever, comes to visit, and he gives this sermon that's like, oh my gosh. It's like somewhere towards the later part of the movie. Not at the very end, but it's towards the later part where he comes. He seems like he's such a humble, sweet guy when he talks to the kids and when he talks to the other staff, and he's so understanding. And then he gives this speech about hell and like the stench of rotting flesh, and you know, in your nostrils for however many hundreds of thousands of millions of years, and you'll be burning and tortured and, you know, in the eternal damnation and all. I'm just like, whoa, like it was a frightening sermon. And even the looks on some of the kids' faces, you're like, geez, this does not sound pleasant. And there was something in there where he says, like, if a sparrow or a bird or what, if there was a ball of, I don't know how he worded it, but if the sun was a ball of lead or something like that, the amount of time it would take if a sparrow flew by once every, I don't know if it's once every year, once every 10 years, and brushed it with its wing until that ball were to wear down to nothing, like people would be in hell even longer than that amount of time. And I'm just like, jeez. Like, it's just like, talk about trying to scare people. Like, I've been through sermons where people were trying to do that, but I never like fully bought into it. Like, I was kind of like, this could be true because they're adults and they're telling us this. But then like the more I learned that adults don't just know everything and they're not always right, I was like, well, these people are probably telling us flawed things, you know. And so, because this can't be right, like it's like, this can't be right. And even if it is, it's like, how do they know, you know? Like, but it's possible that it could be wrong. It's possible that it could be right. I don't know. I've never been to hell. I don't really know if it's there, I don't really know, but the sermons are intense, and I was just like, whoa. But anyways, so that's kind of how the main character is, and then you kind of start seeing along the way that everyone's kind of got their own struggles. So the main character has his struggle of he's bedwetting. I never really dove too much into it, but I feel like there's like a psychological, sexual kind of context to the bedwetting. It's kind of my opinion. I mean, he's kind of old to be wetting the bed. Um, he's like 15 or something. Like, and I think it's a stress response of some kind, maybe a trauma response. To basically the sexual repression, the shame, the guilt, the fear, and I don't know what else. Like I just feel like it's relevant. Like it's a trauma response. That's my opinion. I don't think he's just bedwetting, because it seems like it's every single night, and he's doing the normal things that they tell people to do of like don't drink water after a certain hour and all this kind of stuff. And then he ends up being late all the time because he's got to like scrub out his sheets and then dry them on the line, and so he's late like all the time, and not that's not good for him to be late all the time like that, because it's a very strict school. And then people kind of tease him, there's people, everyone knows, and he's got to hang his sheets out to dry every day and stuff. So he's kind of like unfortunately humbled in that way, and then other people, he seems like a humble kid in general, but like people there at that school, they still kind of tease each other, and so they're teasing him about it, and then he kind of gets like shamed by some of the teachers and stuff, and like he has to go to confession. Like they all have to do this stuff, like they have to go to confession, and it sounds like the priests, or whatever their role is, the priests are very just like not nice. It wasn't like in Angela's Ashes, how, I guess spoiler for that too, how the priests were like listening and then just tell you like say however many Hail Marys and Our Fathers. Like they basically said, like he was just like, get on with it, like say, just spit it out, kind of like, and he's trying to like tell him some kind of like embarrassing thing, and the priest is on the other side of the wall, the little wall that you can kind of see through. He was kind of just like getting angry with him about it, and they had to have some kind of sex talk with them at some point. And you hear the students talking amongst themselves every so often about like wet dreams and erections and all kinds of stuff, and like masturbation and all that kind of stuff. They talk about it quite a bit in the movie, but it's like they're kind of like secretly not supposed to be like talking about it or doing it, but talking about it either. But this main character has like he confides in his friends, like they kind of like trust each other and stuff. So, and then there's another issue that like if one of the students does something wrong or something doesn't go well, then the student just gets sent away, and then they just never come back. So both of his close friends eventually get sent away, and then you start finding out, like before that even, that one of the priests or brothers or whatever his label is, he has some kind of sexual issue. Because he keeps saying, one of them seems pretty level-headed, saying like it's not natural to be like having so much shame and secrecy around like sexuality and the body and all that kind of stuff, because like the kids aren't allowed to take showers in the locker room. They're not allowed to take showers, and with the door, they have doors on the showers, and they're not allowed to take showers without their swimming trunks on. They have to have something that they're wearing. They can't take nude showers. And so because they're not allowed to do that, one time he was doing it, and he's trying to like wash and stuff, and then one of the priests opens the doors and like looks, he just like bust the door open. Like, he didn't, like, but it looked like you could just open the doors, like, if it was magnetic or something. And so they opened the door when he had his shorts off, and he was just kind of, like, shaming him, like, you can't, like, show your naked body kind of thing. And he kind of kept, like, going on and on about it, while other boys were kind of, like, walking past or whatever. And so there's kind of that. And then, so they're definitely taught a lot of shame there. And the one of the priests is kind of like, it's not natural for them to be taught, at the age where they are, like, going through puberty and stuff, and just being, like, just taught so many weird things about, like, secrecy and shame and not needing to know what's what and all that kind of stuff. And one of the older priests was saying stuff too about, like, yeah, it isn't natural and that kind of thing. So those two guys kind of had the same kind of more open-minded approach, but they didn't necessarily always talk to the students about it like that. But I think at one point the older priest did kind of mention some things, but to the main character like that. But I don't think the main character kind of got it. It was like maybe over his head a little bit. And then there's this one priest that kind of had these issues where he was a little, I think he might have been the one that was yelling at the main character for not taking a shower with shorts on. And then he was just kind of mad, and he was always acting as if he didn't have any vices, and, oh, like, I'm so holy because I don't have any of these problems, or, like, I have to do all this praying and all these things just so I don't have to deal with all these temptations and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, he's a little pervy and looking at, like, I guess he had, like, a reputation, like, you could hear, I guess he kind of liked to overhear what some of the students were saying. And so when at this one point where there's some boys out on like in the garden area, like with some of the tools and stuff and rakes or whatever, and they're kind of just talking, they're not really working, and he's, like, crouching down behind some of the bigger plants, like kind of like crawling towards them, and then they kind of call him out, and they're kind of like, oh, if I was this teacher or whatever, I would be lurking behind those bushes there, and, like, kind of like, because they knew that he was, like, listening in on their conversation. So there was that. And then there was this other situation where when they went to the pool, I don't think the boys went to the pool. I can't remember, but I know the priest, they had, like, a free day or something, and the priest went to the pool, and, he's in the locker room watching all the men, like, grown men walking around without their clothes on. And he's all peeking around and stuff as he's, like, taking off his own, like, he's not just minding his own business. He's kind of like, he's not staring, but he's, like, not trying not to look. He's not just minding his own business. They're making a point that he's, like, watching and looking and, like, enticed in some way. And then he goes and gets in the pool, and then he's looking at ladies' breasts, and, like, he's looking under the door where you can see, like somebody kneels down, and you can kind of see, like, butt cheeks underneath the changing doors that were, like, adjacent to, like, the pool or parallel to the pool. And so when he was, like, dipping down under the water, he could see just enough underneath to kind of have that view. And then he started having some dreams about being in the water and naked women kind of, like, swimming all around and touching him and stuff. And then he goes into a meeting and starts lying about, like, oh, he doesn't have any kind of issues kind of thing. And so, he had his own things going on. But kind of just the issue with him more so, other than all the peeking around and stuff, was that he wasn't owning up to it. And he kind of acted like none of that was going on. And then there were some kids, some kind of weirdo kind of kids that were kind of, like, trying to, like other kids were telling the main character, stay away from those guys because they're weird. And he was on the bus ride when they went out of town that day. the time when that other priest went to the pool. When they went out of town that day, um, on the bus ride, he was looking at, um, what was I saying? On the bus ride, oh yeah, on the bus ride, one of the weird kids was kind of telling the main character, I'm trying to transcend, pain and all this kind of stuff. So they're doing all these kind of like physical kind of like things, and so it looks like, I think he was saying he held his ankle, his own ankle or part of his shin or something against the radiator for like however long, and he's like, oh, like that, that would have really burned. And then he shows the main character that he has this like burn on his leg or something, and he's like, and so that weird kid for a while was trying to like convince the main character, if you really want to be holy and you really want to stop struggling with your sins and the bedwetting and all the other issues that you're having with your, sexuality and things, then you need to come and join our group and you'll learn how to transcend that kind of thing, as they called it, as he called it. And then, so the main character does get advice from some of his older friends, like, hey, don't hang out around those guys, they're strange. And then he goes one night, like, in the middle of the night, he's going down this path to, like, see them, because I guess he knew where they were going to be hanging out, and he went to go see them, and he walks into this place somewhere, let's call it like a shed, like I don't know, it was some place, they had lighting in there or candles or something, and there was one of them kind of kneeled down with his back exposed, kind of like his shirt off, pants on, and just like kneeled down, and somebody's like, one of them is like whipping him with something, on purpose, like they're doing this to try to transcend pain. And then the main character's like, you're all mad, like kind of like, like, what are you doing? Because he's like, this is weird. And then because he wanted to see what it was all about, and then he's running away, they're trying to capture him, and then one of his older friends sees him running, and they kind of just like run into each other as those guys are about to capture or catch him. And then he, like, the main character's friend is like, I told you to stay away from those weirdos, like, what were they doing? And he couldn't even like explain what was going on. He's like, yeah, I told you it was weird. But then unfortunately later, that main guy who was kind of strange, like, he was telling him on that bus ride, the main character on that bus ride as well, like, during that time when he showed him his burn on his leg, he's like, I'm gonna try to swim across this lake. And at that time it was like frozen, and I think at one point they were the main character and one of his older friends were talking about, like, yeah, if I was in this lake, I probably wouldn't even be able to survive like 30 seconds or something, because it's so cold. It wasn't frozen over, but it was like ice cold water. And then yeah, like, he basically, that kid, they couldn't find him one day, the weird kid, and then, I mean, a lot of them were weird, but I mean, it's because they were being forced to like do all kinds of strange things, but I mean, do and not do all kinds of strange things. But yeah, he basically goes and swims across the lake, I guess doesn't make it, and then they end up going to search for him and find his body. Unfortunately, he's not living, because he probably froze in there or something, but he was trying to do that to transcend pain, to see if he could transcend pain, and I guess he did it on his own, tried to do it on his own, so they did eventually find him in the water or whatever. But yeah, and so, I think they said they just kind of had a little bit of a blurb about it, where they were just like, the priests were talking about it or something, like something about like sadomasochism and like homosexuality or something. I don't remember what they were saying, but like, they were just, those were the types of phrases that I remember them saying about it. And then they were just like, oh, because like they're being forced to live this unnatural kind of way or whatever. and so I don't really know. Like, they had all that kind of stuff going on and created like a cult. Like, that little group was like a cult. I guess they got disbanded. Like, I don't know. It wasn't like there was no real explanation past that too much. But then yeah, once his bestie gets, well, I guess there's a scene where they do kind of, I don't know. There's some scenes that are kind of like, I don't know what you would call it, experimental, I guess. There's some experimental situation going on with a couple of those guys at a certain point, and then they basically they basically, I guess they just, the movie just kind of ends, and I think the whole thing is they were going to try to change the school a little bit more to make it a little more different or something. I don't know, but then the main character eventually, he runs away, and then he goes and once he runs away, he goes and the other two of the priests were gonna go catch like a soccer game or a rugby game or something live, and then I guess it was like the championship, and then they find the main character trying to like hitchhike away or something, and then they end up picking him up, and he thinks, oh, they're gonna take me back to the school, and he's like, no. They're like, no. If you want us to take you with us to go see the rugby final, and then we'll take you home after that. So that's kind of the end of it. But I don't know, guys, like, weird movie. It wasn't the first time I've seen it. I think I came across it because I was trying to watch The Devil's Playground, the Amish one. Like, I've rewatched that. It's one of my favorite documentaries. Like, I think that was one of the not this isn't a documentary, but I think The Devil's Playground, the Amish one, was one of those life-changing documentaries I watched when I was younger. Because I was introduced to that documentary by one of my youth or collegiate pastors, and we watched that movie during, one of our Vespers or something. And then we would always have discussions every time. So even if we watched movies or like read something or whatever, there would be a discussion. It was basically a Friday night religious discussion group, and so we did that for Vespers every single Friday night. And then one of the Friday nights we watched that movie, and we just kind of talked about it. I remember I liked it because it was about teens, having to make a decision, and I found it very relatable. I was like, this is probably one of the more relatable movies that we'd ever watched, even though I didn't grow up Amish, but I was like, I found that movie to have a lot of relatable points. So I think I came across this title of The Devil's Playground, the 1976 or so one, because I was trying to search for the other one, because I didn't originally know that this one even existed, but I think I clicked on it and saw what it was. I think it was on Netflix at one point. I'm pretty sure it was on Netflix at one point. I don't know. When I first saw it a long time ago, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was on Netflix at one point. But I did watch it, and it was an interesting movie. But yeah, I'm not here to pick on Catholics or anything. Like, I don't, like I mentioned before, I think my opinion on these types of things is that it's not a Catholic problem. I think it's more the rules and I do think they had a point about, like, in the movie, about, like, unnatural things that are, like, unnatural, like, everyone has, like, some kind of natural inclination, even if it's not sexual things. Like, say, like, if you're grumpy, you have an inclination to be, like, irritable. Like, naturally, that's how you are, right? But you don't really have to act grumpy. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to act on it. It's hard not to, but you don't have to, right? You don't have to be irritable towards people, especially when they're not, like, intentionally bothering you, right? So you don't have to. It might not seem like it's a choice, but it is a choice. But it's like, it's one of those things, people have to be mindful of it to be able to not do it. And it's the same thing as like, um, you know, like other things. Like it doesn't have to be like sexual things, but it's like people just naturally want to do things, some things, like, but then there is a way to kind of like repress it or stop it or decrease it. Like sometimes you might want to be really compassionate towards someone, and then maybe you're not. You stop yourself from being nice or compassionate. Sometimes you might want to be really rude or mean towards someone, and then you stop yourself from acting like that. People can stop themselves from acting on like sexual desires. Like that's a possible thing. But I think some things it's like I've noticed when it comes to sexuality, a lot of Western culture is very repressive about it. I think a lot of it does come from religion, but then a lot of it also just comes from, I think it mostly stems from religion, because I feel like to my knowledge, most indigenous groups of people, to my knowledge, don't usually seem to have such strict, views about sexuality and stuff. Maybe a little bit, I don't know, but I feel like if it's like any of the like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, if it's not one of those kind of major religions, if it's not a major religion, even like Hinduism and Buddhism and things like that, like I think if it's not a major religion, if it's some other kind of religion or like spiritual practice, I feel like most of the time it's not going to be that strict. I feel like organized religions, and especially like a lot of the more modern ones, I don't know. Catholicism isn't modern, and neither is Protestantism. But anyways, yeah, I feel like even Judaism, it can be kind of sexually repressive depending. And it's kind of like that with every religion. I would say depending. There are definitely pockets of groups of people that are very open-minded, and then other pockets that can't even stand that other people do sexual things. But I don't really know. I don't really know. But yeah, that's pretty much all the long-winded amount of stuff that I have to say about that movie. Pretty interesting one. I'd kind of recommend it. If you're into movies about religion. If I can find the link, I'll post it. Of the one that I watched for free online. It's such an old movie. Like, you can find it for free online. I just Googled it and streamed it on, like, was it Tubi? I think it was Tubi, but I don't remember for sure. But, alright guys, with that, I'm done. So, thanks for listening.